keeping local government local. That's what people want. They want to have a say over their local communities. Now, I can tell you one thing, however, we haven't been to, and that's to a meeting of community members who supported forced amalgamations. I've scoured Facebook, I've scoured the media, we've all sought to try and find where these meetings might be so we could actually hear the arguments.
There's the Property Council AGM.
I'm sure, yes. Good point. Property Council AGM may certainly be one, and that's a history that's yet to be written, I think, about where this all came from. Give us one piece of evidence that shows that bigger is better. We've looked at evidence from the University of New England and their specialist department in relation to local government. University of Technology, Sydney. We've said to ministers and premiers, one piece of peer-reviewed evidence. Not one piece has ever been presented to us. The academics we've consulted have not been able to find one piece of peer-reviewed evidence that says simply making a council bigger makes it better in any way. So what, at the core, at the dark heart of this, is actually a fallacious attempt to present local councils as having financial problems and to be proposing something about which there is absolutely no evidence. We have to look at how councils are financed before we begin to look at tinkering with boundaries. So that's the fundamental evidence. We've also been talking to local residents, as Phil indicated. I mean, we seem to be readily all putting in GIPers into the government. I remember one of my favourite GIPers where I got back something like 280 pages, and they agreed to give me the information, but it was all blacked out. The whole thing was redacted. The only thing in the whole document that wasn't redacted, and even the signature of the person was redacted, was the date of the document. You just can't get information out of these guys. All of us have basically been to NCAT. We've tried to get this famous 400,000 KPMG report. $400,000. We know how much it costs. The Premier simply said, this is it. This is the basis upon which we're going to forcibly merge councils, and none of us have been able to see it. Now, I'm told by my spies in Premier that, in fact, their strong view is that this document doesn't exist. That what KPMG were paid for and what they delivered over 2 months was a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet goes through, and we now know some of the assumptions which have been torn to pieces by academics. Those assumptions have been torn to pieces, but the real reason that they won't release it is because it lists other councils. It lists other communities that will be targets if they're given the green light after the next election. And that is political dynamite, and that's why they've fought so hard to stop us from getting it. The Labor Party in 2011 was totally smashed. You know, we're a bad government, we did the wrong things. Smart people have to look at their policies, look at what they did wrong and do things differently. One of the things we've done is at our annual conference, we got 1,000 people from all over New South Wales. It unanimously, on my recommendation, put into our compulsory party platform that we do not support forced mergers. That's now binding on every Labor Party member of Parliament. That I have consistently said, we've moved motions in Parliament, we've moved bills, we have sought to introduce the capacity of people to have voluntary demergers. Give you this undertaking, and I've now also given it in writing here, signed by myself to the committee this evening, that we certainly, if we form the government and I become the Minister for Local Government, and I'm glad this is being taken very, very precisely, that we will join with the other political parties, other than obviously the Liberals and the Nationals, and we will introduce legislation that will allow you to voluntarily demerge and bring back Pittwater Council. Absolutely guaranteed 100%. Now, one of the things that was mentioned, for example, is needing to get signatures from the whole forcibly merged areas. That's not the case. That's not what happens in relation to the Queensland legislation. That won't happen here. To kick this process off, we are proposing something along the lines of Queensland, which will be a percentage of people who lived in the former council area. So the former council area, that kicks the process off. It then goes to a revised boundaries commission along the lines that Professor Sampson proposed to look at, so to make sure that every person is clear about the pros and cons and the benefits. Then that is put to a referendum of the local community. So the people of Pittwater would be the ones participating in the referendum. Okay, so it's the former council area. If you get 50% plus one, the minister will be obliged to enact that. We're going to take away the ministerial discretion to say yes or no. Okay, 50% plus one. We want to make it clear that these are decisions for the local community. If a majority of people wish to stay merged, that's a decision that they've made. If the majority of the local community here of the former Pittwater decide that they wish to demerge, knowing all of the the pros and cons, and we'll open up all the books on that, then that's what will happen. No ifs, no buts. But I'm very happy to answer questions along with the rest of the panel. Thanks very much.